Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to KidLit Works, creating books with heart. We are a picture book debut group with books being published in 2024 and beyond. My name is Pam Courtney, and I am one of 13 members of Team KidLit Works, Crafted with Heart. And I am over the moon excited to be hosting our KidLit's Work Crafted with Heart's very first blog. And we're also excited, over the moon excited about our first guest, I'm going to call it our Chit and Chat Cafe. Why not, right? And so, why am I excited? Well, we have my longtime friend, my mentor, Vivian Kirkfield. I need to cue the applause, Vivian. Hi, Vivian. How are you?
Hi. Thank
I
you,
am.
Pam. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I'm so excited that you chose to join us. But before we begin, for those of you who took the time to drop by our blog to take a look and see what's going on, we would love it if you were to click that subscribe button to our blog and to our newsletter. We'd also be so honored if you shared this interview and our newsletter with everyone. And with that, I'm going to say welcome, dear friend Vivian. How are you?
I am doing awesome and I'm so excited to be here. Love being the first interview of your amazing group for your blog.
Thank
And
you.
as soon as we finish the interview, I'm running over to subscribe.
Thank you. Yay.
Yes, yes.
But you know what, Vivian, we've known each other since, let's see, way back at that Georgia retreat for the nonfiction writers retreat. How I mean, like, how much fun was that?
That was amazing. It was amazing. It was actually the moment that I jumped into writing nonfiction. So
Mm,
that was 2015.
I think
Yeah.
2015.
Yep.
Doesn't seem that long ago, but we've
Yeah.
made so many friendships at that
Yep.
retreat. And
Yep.
we were
Yep.
all just learning, beginning crafting picture books. But since then,
Yep.
Vivian, you've gone on to accomplish so much in this industry. And I won't list all of your accomplishments right now. We'll just let all of your wonderfulness of your journey just kind of unfold as we sit and, well, chit and chat with each other. So let's begin. One of the
Wonderful.
things, one of the things I've always wanted to know, what was that moment when your heart just spoke to you and said, Vivian, you will write for children?
Yeah, so that is really such a great question because, I started out as a kindergarten teacher. I mean, I always loved reading, obviously. I always loved books. And I loved reading with children, and that's why I became a kindergarten teacher, right? Because I knew that reading picture books was going to be a big part of the day, especially back in the 60s.
Mm,
And so I did that, but it wasn't until my son gave me a very unusual birthday gift for my 64th birthday,
mm-hmm.
and he took me skydiving, which was amazing and
Yeah.
so much fun. But the best part, for many reasons, was when my feet touched the ground,
Mm.
I knew that if I could jump out of a perfectly good airplane, I could probably do anything. And that was a good thing because now I had a new dream. I was finished with teaching
Yeah.
and I had self published a book for parents and teachers in the end of 2010, and it was all about using picture books.
Yes.
Surprise,
I have that
surprise,
wonderful book.
surprise. Yep. So show me how.
Yes.
And it was all
Mm-hmm.
about using picture books for teachers and parents to use picture books. And so I was blogging. I had started blogging, which was harder even than writing that book because I'm so tech challenged and afraid. I wouldn't even open the computer and turn it on. I thought, if I press a button,
Right.
it would actually delete everything from everybody else's computer.
Right.
I had
Everything would explode.
a grandiose perception of my
Mhm,
strength, I guess.
mhm, mhm.
But so I had this book and I was blogging to try to connect with parents and teachers. And in my blogging, I was connecting with people who were not only reviewing picture books and reading picture books, but
Mhm.
they were writing them or wanting to write them. Like Marcy Colleen, like Penny Parker Klosterman, like I
Yes.
could name you a million names.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
had no books, they had no agents, they were just starting. And I thought, that's interesting. And then I jumped out of the plane and I was like, yes,
Did it. Yeah.
that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write for children. So
Right.
that was kind of the moment, the lead up into that moment.
Yeah.
Um,
So when you decided that you were going to write for children, how did you go about choosing what subjects you were going to write on? And yeah, just how did you choose your stories?
that's really that segues so beautifully into the next thing, which right, how did I do it? And what interested me as a child were people, places, and things. And I
Mhm.
actually read the Encyclopedia Britannica from cover to cover because I loved facts. I loved finding out. So when I was introduced to the nonfiction, I was like, oh my God, that's what I love. So I knew I wanted to write that because as a child, I had enjoyed it. And I think for me, picture books, all books, what do we hope to accomplish with them?
Yeah,
We want to engage children. We want children to be engaged with whatever the story is, even
indeed.
if it's a comic book. I don't care, whatever, as long as
Yes.
they're reading. we want we want to spark their curiosity. They could be reading a fiction book about a little bear that the three little bears or whatever. And that's
Mhm.
okay because maybe it'll spark their curiosity into, well, what do bears eat? Or maybe decide to be a zoologist. I don't know. We don't
Right.
know what effect each story will have on a child.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, so I knew nonfiction. I loved writing in rhyme. I
Love
wrote
it.
terrible rhyme, but I loved writing in rhyme. I had
Mhm.
no clue that it wasn't really good rhyme
Right. Yes.
until, yeah, until an agent got one of my rhyming stories
Oh.
and
Oh.
and he sent it back and he said, very interesting story. So do you think you should maybe write it in prose?
So
So
interesting.
that's when I knew I needed to take some classes
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
because just because I had gotten an A in English in high school or in college doesn't
Hmm.
mean I can write a picture book.
Right. Exactly.
And
Exactly.
so, that the next year I went crazy and took a whole bunch of classes and
Took all the
they
class.
were helpful. I took all the classes and they were
Yeah.
very helpful.
Yeah.
But it was also mentors. So Susanna Hill, she was the
Yes.
first because I went to her blog to read
Hmm.
about picture books
Hmm.
and I discovered uh, her amazing blog and her contests and her challenges and I participated in every single one for
Yes.
years and years.
Yes. Yes.
um, Carol Lazar, another
Hmm.
mentor
Hmm.
whose blog is amazing. And if your audience of writers and illustrators and whoever else is your audience, teachers and parents, those are
Yes.
great blogs to go to. Susanna Hill
Yeah.
and
Right.
Carol Lazar,
Hmm.
because not only do they blog about picture books, but they have author illustrator interviews, and they're a
Hmm.
great resource for writers as
Exactly.
well.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
yeah.
I love how you mentioned these major influencers in your life and how they guided and coached and nurtured your journey. But I also loved how you shared about how that teacher DNA came out,
Yes.
and kind of guided you on how you should, on the types of books you should be writing about and why you're writing. And I love that. So of the books that you've written, let's just talk about the books that you have written. I'll, as you say them, I'll just kind of go on my fingers like this.
Okay.
As
Okay.
you share your amazing books that you've written. And guys, I just kind of want you to know that I've had the honor and privilege of being on the front end. I'm gonna brag, yeah. So I've kind of been on the
Yeah.
front end of a couple of her manuscripts and that's when I knew, I'm like, she's gonna do some big things in this.
Well, you are so kind because you know that I have been a huge fan of your writing. And from the very beginning, in
Mm-hmm,
2015, I was
mm-hmm.
like, oh my God, those need to be books. That needs to be book, and that needs to be book, and that needs to.
You've
So,
always been the cheerleader.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think, you know what? I love the writing, and I love having books come out, of course. I
Mm-hmm,
love sharing them with kids.
mm-hmm.
But one of my favorite things is reading other people's manuscripts and working with them, right? Because I'm just so excited that we all find success. And that goes for
Yes,
children as well.
yes,
We want them to find success, to follow their passion to a life of purpose, right?
right.
Because if
There's
you
that.
have a passion for
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is, collecting bubblegum labels, I don't care, marbles, something,
Mm-hmm.
you follow it, you will find the purpose in your life. And, you know, my purpose is cheering everybody on
You
because,
are like the
uh,
biggest cheerleader, the biggest supporter in this kid litmosphere that I talk
you,
about. But there's that teacher sensibility coming
yeah,
out and wanting
right,
to nurture and
right.
coach and
Yep,
be a
yep.
part of helping writers see their dreams come true.
Thank
So
you.
yeah,
Thank
so
you. Sorry,
dreams
I
coming
got off
true.
topic.
No, 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 because I love, well, we have the longest conversations, you and I. It's
Yes,
like,
yes,
let's get off the phone. But
right.
yeah, so your amazing books.
Okay, so my debut year was really interesting. So it was
It was
2019, the
mhm,
year I turned 72. So everybody out there, you are never too old to follow your dream. Just
wonderful,
go and do it. And you're never too young,
wonderful.
you know, to begin thinking about it. The first year, so this was the first book that got signed. So Sweet Dream Sarah, and then For Otter's Toboggan. Those were all the first year. So it's about a river
Mhm.
and animals, endangered animals. And then Pippa's Passover Plate. So that was the third. All right. So that was the first year. Then 2000 and then right, then 2018 we signed this book. So that was
Oh
the next one. It came out in
yes,
2020.
yeah. My
Um,
homeschooler loves that book.
yeah, I love this book too so much because it's about friendship.
Yes.
It's about being an ally.
Hmm.
It's about, you know, all kinds of discrimination,
Hmm.
gender discrimination, body appearance discrimination, racial discrimination. I mean,
Hmm.
and yet it's an
Hmm.
engaging story. So it's not like we're not banging it on the head of
You're
people.
there's nothing didactic about this book, and
Yeah,
yet it
yeah,
does inform in this very, it's very educational, it's informative, but it's done in this very creative, generous, but gentle way of introducing children to these kinds of things that these two women had to endure during
right,
the course of, trying to bring their art
right,
to people.
exactly. So, I
Yeah,
mean, that's how, you know, Aliana Harris, who's an amazing, amazing illustrator.
love.
Um, and so this is how she showed the pushback, right?
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
pushback that Ella
Hmm.
received. And then the pushback that Marilyn received,
Right. Yeah.
each for
Yeah.
different reasons, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
I love that I was able to bring that balance between those two women who were both icons. They were
Yes.
so famous in their own right, but it's like the last words say, even stars need a little help to shine.
Mm-hmm.
And so even though Marilyn was a superstar, she needed Ella's help.
She's
And
needed
even though Ella was this amazing jazz
talent.
celebrity,
Mm-hmm.
talent, like musician
Mm-hmm.
extraordinaire, she needed Marilyn's help. So that's what life is about, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The support community. And thank you for
Support,
that
right?
book. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you so
yeah.
much for that book. So that's
Oh, well,
four.
thank you. I love it before. And then this came out in 2021. So this one, I love this book because it's really 9 books in one. There's 9
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
full-length picture book stories in
Mm-hmm.
here
Mm-hmm.
about
Amazing.
inventors visionaries whose inventions changed the way the world moves. And this was so much fun to write, but not easy because I had 9 months to write those stories, 9 stories.
So was this a an assignment you got from a publisher? How did this book come
Yeah,
about?
so right, so that's a very interesting way that it's come about. I had written a story about this guy, Eric Wickman, who came to the United States from Sweden in 1905. And he was like 17 years old. He had lived on a farm. Things were very bad in Sweden. So he came to the land of opportunity, America, in 1905, right?
Mm,
1905. And he
mhm,
couldn't speak English. He only had a few dollars in his pocket and he starts doing different jobs. He becomes a logger in Arizona. Did I know that there were forests in Arizona? No, I didn't know that. But anyway, he winds up in Hibbing, Minnesota, where it's freezing cold,
mhm.
working in the mines, and he gets fired. So, he didn't have good luck with all of his jobs. So he takes the little bit of money that he earned and he buys a car dealership because now it's
Oh,
1914 Model
mhm,
T, and cars are beginning to get popular.
mhm.
But he doesn't buy a Model T. He buys I don't know what, some crazy kind of car that's like an eight-seater car. And nobody buys it. Like it's in the showroom and nobody buys it because they were all poor miners.
Mhm, mhm.
And so after a year, he buys it and he begins offering rides to the miners from the town two
Mhm.
miles away to the mine, back and forth, 15 cents a ride, 25 cents round trip. So popular
Mhm.
that he has to buy another car and hire more drivers, and that becomes the Greyhound Bus Company.
Right. Yes. I remember this
So
manuscript.
we
I remember.
we
Yeah.
sent that story to Ann Ryder at Houghton Mifflin. She
Mhm.
loved it, but she said, you know, buses, kids like them, but not like rockets. And Eric Wickman, nobody heard of
Who is he?
him.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, who is he? She said, could you write a few more stories similar about other things that move? Like maybe a
Mhm.
car, a train, I don't know. So I
Mhm.
gave her a list and she asked for 5, but then the contract said 7 to 10. So,
Okay.
okay, right. So I already had that one written. And then I already had one written about the Montgolfier brothers who invented the hot air balloon in 1783
Mhm.
in Paris.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
had 2 stories. Yeah,
Okay.
you probably remember that one.
Yes. Yes.
And now I had to write 7 stories, and I had 9 months to write 7 nonfiction. So that was a lot of research. And then you begin a rough draft, right? Rough draft,
Mhm. Mhm.
opening lines, closing lines, whatever. Thank goodness I had a lot of critique buddies
Yeah.
because I would write the rough draft, polish it a little, send it out.
Send it out. Mm-hmm.
Start on the next one. Send that one out, get the other one back, revise per that, send it out again. Now I'm
Yes.
working on third, send it
Yes.
out. I was like an assembly line of writing, but I love it. I love it. I mean, and I think, and every story, I mean, it makes a great mentor text. If you want to write
It's
nonfiction, pick the book biographies. I'm telling
and
you, this is the book.
and it's amazing how we always say that it takes a village to write a book, but it really did take a
Yes,
village to write a book,
it
because I do
did.
remember two of those manuscripts, but the rest of them, when I read that book, I was like, oh my gosh, when did she have time
Right. Where did she come up with those
to
stories?
yeah, to do all of that? But it's amazing how amazing, it's wonderful how amazing our community, our KidLit community
Oh,
truly
it's
is.
wonderful.
And the help is just so generous. Okay, so that book, number
Right.
5.
Number 5. So next year in February, I have a new book coming out. I actually have a copy because at
Love it.
NCTE, the
Yes,
editor, Carolyn,
yes.
brought me a copy from their advanced box. And I love it, love it. I love the illustrator is Allison J. She did
Beautiful
an
illustration.
amazing job. And of
Yes.
course, you got to see it because it
I'm going
NCTE.
to interrupt. I'm going to interrupt you, Vivian, because you have to know that when Vivian got her book, I truly like accosted her and was like, "You got to read this book to me. You got to sit down right here." So we were in the middle of this food court one evening, and I'm like, "You got to read the book. You got to read the book to me." And she was so gracious. She was like, "Really? You want me to read this book?" I'm thinking to myself, "You're Vivian Kirkfield. This is your new book. Of course, I want you to read this book to me." But she was so gracious, and she sat and she read that book, and it was so beautiful. That
Thank
story
you. Thank
was
you.
just the way this story unfolded. Now, I love how you got the gig from here to there. But tell me about the journey of this particular book. I know a little bit about it, and it intrigued me so much. And I'm thinking, you had to go through this. You're
Right.
Vivian Kirkfield. How does that happen?
See, that's such a good point to make because no matter where we are on our journey, whether we're a newbie and we haven't taken any writing classes, whether we've been in the trenches for 10 or 15 years and we still don't have a book deal, whether we're multi-published and oh my God, won all kinds of awards, it
Mhm,
doesn't matter because every single manuscript, it's like you're starting over again.
mhm,
It's the first
mhm,
one.
mhm,
And every editor that you work with, because it's a different manuscript, maybe it's a different editor, that's different. So it's always a learning process.
okay.
It's and I think we always have to come to it with an open heart
Yes.
and a desire to make the best story possible, honor
Mhm,
whoever we're writing about or whatever we're writing about, even if it's fiction, honor the
mhm,
child that's going to read it, right? We want to
right.
honor
Oh,
that
so
child,
beautiful.
right?
So beautiful.
So we want to give them the best story we can, not a story that's good enough. We want the best story. So when
Mhm,
an editor says, as this editor said when he got this manuscript, I really like it, but it's not ready yet. Could you revise it? And sometimes they're very clear, like it has to be shorter, and I want this and I want that. But many times they're not because they don't know quite what's not right about it.
mm,
Just know it isn't right
right.
yet.
It's not where
So,
they would like it to be in order to sell it.
right, exactly. And that's the other thing. I mean, editors who fall in love with a story, they have to sell it to their team, to
Right.
their acquisitions team, because maybe there's 8 editors or 20 editors or 5 editors, however many in their
Hmm.
company.
Hmm.
And they have weekly meetings, monthly meetings, however often. And they go in with this manuscript, and so does every other editor come in with a manuscript. And I'm sure it's not easy to convince the whole team,
Right.
yeah, this is the one we have to go with, right? So they have to, that's why sometimes writers will get back feedback from an editor that says, I didn't quite love it enough
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
champion it. And that's exactly what they mean. It's a
Right.
great story. It's nicely written or well written. Maybe it's on an interesting person, but they've got to absolutely fall in love with it so
Mm-hmm.
that they can be the proper champion
Mm-hmm.
for your
Mm-hmm.
story. So I kind of understand that. I mean, it's frustrating when my agent sends me,
Yeah.
no, 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 for stories that I know are really great
Mm-hmm.
stories. But you know
Mm-hmm.
what? Oh,
Well,
I revised it. I revised it.
so what, as you stand in your why as to why you're writing this book, why you chose to write a specific book, they too have to believe in that book. They have to stand in their why so that when they
Yes,
bring it to those multiple people, they can then say, this is why this book should be on the shelf. So when you brought your manuscript to them initially, they were like, something needs to be done.
right,
And then what happens after that?
right.
Was it a total rewrite or just a revise or?
Yeah, no, so I just revised it. I
Mhm,
don't know. I shortened it a little, trimmed it. I gave it to my critique buddies. They gave me suggestions
mhm.
and we sent it back. Nope, not yet. So,
But let me interrupt you. When you
yeah,
sent it back that second time, how strongly did you feel about where this book was? How
I
how
thought it was
strongly?
amazing. I thought it was
Okay.
amazing. Yeah, I thought it was great. What is she
Mhm.
looking for, right?
Right.
So, yes, no, not yet. So then I went and I Googled that editor. And this is a
Mhm,
great tip for everybody. I
mhm,
Googled that editor. If you get an R&R, right? So find out about that editor. Find out what books that editor has edited in the past. It's especially helpful if the editor has been there a long time, and which this editor has. And I read maybe 5 or 6 or 7 interviews that she did over the years, the last 5 or 6 years. And in each interview, funnily enough, she mentions a book or 2 books that she's working on. So then I went to the library and I took those books out.
mm,
And because
mm,
now they're books, right? This was
mhm.
a few years ago. And I read each book and I read each book as a mentor text. Not just, oh, this is a nice story, but how did that writer begin?
Wow. Okay.
How did that writer end? Did the ending echo the beginning, or was it a twist at the end? Was it funny
Mhm.
at the end? Was it heartfelt at the end? What? And what I discovered was that this particular editor likes quotes to be kind of woven into either the story or the artwork. She likes a lot of action,
Mhm.
wants it tight. She doesn't want like, and in the meantime, after the sunset, no, she wants Annie cycled to Marseille.
She wants that
Well,
engagement. Yeah.
right. She wants what's happening. So I revised with those mentor texts in mind, the things that she obviously loved because she acquired those, and she took it.
Wonderful.
So
But
that was
here's the amazing thing is that you did your homework. Not only did you look up mentor texts and do your study of the hows and whys, what made this work, what didn't make it work, but you also did your homework. You did research on the editor that you were, trying to have her hold your book close to her heart, right?
right,
And
right,
I think we do that to a small extent, but not to pinpoint and look at exactly what was that editor's trademark, her brand, her signature brand of
right.
what draws her attention to that book. And that is a wonderful, wonderful piece of advice. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, I hope it helps people because um, even when you're just first submitting
Mhm,
to an editor,
Mhm.
If you can find out about that editor, I mean, I'm not saying change your writing style for an editor, no, but
Mhm.
certainly find out what types of writing she loves or he
Right.
loves,
Right.
and see if yours is like that.
That's another good piece of writing advice. Don't change your style, because here
Right.
again, standing in your purpose of why you write the book that you choose to write is so incredibly important. Um,
Hmm.
so I like that you're saying, you're emphasizing, don't try to change your style for every editor
Right.
that.
And advocate for your book.
Mhm,
Your
mhm.
book is your story, your manuscript is your baby, right?
So
It's our baby.
when you say advocate for your book, what do you mean? So if you turn in you turned in your book, your amazing book. Actually, why don't you continue with your story with the revising? Because maybe that may answer my question when you say advocate for your book. Um,
Right. Well, I mean, um with Pedal Balance Steer, so
yeah.
then she acquired it, right? And there was still a little bit of revision to do, but
Mm-hmm,
now she gave me targeted suggestions like, could you change this word or whatever?
mm-hmm,
Um, case in point, the next book that's coming out with the same editor, One Girl's Voice, and it's about Lucy Stone, who was a contemporary of Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony back in the 1850s, 1860s for women's rights and abolition.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And in one scene, and she acquired it, and now it was the revision time for an acquired manuscript. So the editor sends you your manuscript back with red lines or questions, and you think we could change this, or what do you think about that? And one of the things was um, Lucy Stone's quote is, she was sitting in church and the minister was giving a sermon on how women should never speak in public. And that did not sit well with Lucy Stone. And so
mm-hmm,
she was elbowing her cousin who was sitting next to her. And her
mm-hmm,
words are, I elbowed her black and blue,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
black and blue. And so I was a quote. So I quoted her. And my editor made a little note and she circled the word black and she
mm-hmm,
said, do we, maybe we have another way of, of putting this,
mm-hmm,
and just take out the black and blue. Because years ago, that meant, oh, you had like a bruise, right? But now we're trying to be a little more sensitive and
mm-hmm,
respectful
mm-hmm,
to people and
mm-hmm.
not make a color be the bad thing, right? Whatever color, pink, I don't know, I don't care, any color. So I was like, yeah, that's great. Of course. I mean, I wouldn't want to like offend anybody or write the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we listen to our editors
Mm-hmm.
and we take their advice seriously because they know they're this is their expertise, right? They're
Right.
editors.
Mm-hmm.
But if an editor advised me or asked me to change the tone of the story, then I would have to stand up and say no, which is what happened with Sweet Dream Sarah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and Pam, you know very well because you were so helpful to me. When this book, which I absolutely love, and it's won awards, and it's
It's
an
amazing.
amazing book.
It is.
Um, and so far, the only book about this amazing woman, Sarah E. Good. So I'm glad I wrote it. But
Mm-hmm.
when I first got the illustrations, it was really a different story because the illustrator had put her husband on every page. And
I
really, he
remember
wasn't
that.
the story at all.
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, I mentioned him, but she was the one that built the furniture. She was the one that owned the store. She was the one that got the patent. So this was a story about a strong Black woman only 20 years after the
The
end
end
of
of
Civil
slave,
War
yeah, the
and the end
institution of
of
slavery.
slavery.
Mhm.
Right. I wanted it to be about her, but no. Every single page that says Sarah stood back and looked at her piece of furniture and or oh no, she hurried to the shop and began building.
Mhm.
And the picture showed we only saw Sarah's back
Yes.
and then we saw her husband building.
Right.
I was like,
Yes.
what? No, that's not my story.
You were
So
livid.
oh, I was so sad. I was so sad. It was like not my story,
Right.
right?
Yes.
There was one picture where the bed is not working out, and the husband has got his arm around her, like, "Oh, honey, don't worry, I'll fix it." But that's not what the word said.
Right.
It said Sarah dove right in and fixed it or something. So
She dove right in and
my
fixed it.
words were like so powerful, and the pictures were so not.
Yes. Yes.
So
I-
and so that's what I mean when I say you have to advocate for your story. So it wasn't easy. It
And
wasn't easy.
advocate you did, and it was not easy for you. I do remember
Yeah.
um, the pictures where she was in the foreground and the husband was taking center stage, and you were
Yes.
like, "This is not
This is
this is
not my
not a story
story.
about him. This
Right.
is her story. She should be featured." And yeah, and you advocated for those changes, and it took you quite a
Right.
while. It took you quite a
It took
while.
months, and finally, um, finally the changes were made. But and there were many other things that weren't right,
Yeah, yeah.
and some were changed. So I'm proud of the book. I love the book. And I advise everybody. And that's the thing. You've got to love your story. You've
Mhm.
got to be passionate about your story because you can't fight for it if you're not, right?
Right.
You'll be like, all right, whatever. If it's
Yeah.
whatever, I don't know, go plant a garden or something.
Right. Well, and it kind of goes to how sometimes we see these amazing trends and we want to get on the bandwagon of these
Hmm.
trends, and forget about our heart, our heart
Right,
stories.
right.
Um, but one of the things that I loved about um, one of the things that I love about the books you write, there are these very strong-willed, purposeful characters that are in your nonfiction, um, especially your biographies and in what balance, pedal, push. I keep getting the
Pedal balance steer.
pedal
Pedal balance
balance
steer.
steer.
Yeah,
We,
yep.
we, we kind of skipped over like really what that particular story is about. Can you
Hmm.
share with our listening audience
Yeah.
exactly what is the premise of that story?
So the premise of the story is a young woman, an immigrant, um, who lives in Boston, and she hears about a wager. And she and her husband and three young children. She's 24 years old. She's already got three young children, 6 years old and under.
Mm-hmm.
And it's 1894, and she here. They live in a tenement, and she hears there's a wager to pay $10,000, the first woman to ride a bike around the world. So Jules Verne wrote Around the World in 80 Days, whenever he wrote it. And a few years after that, a man cycled around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so now these people were saying, I bet no woman could do it. Because, in those days, their place was in the home. Women were not allowed to speak in public.
Mm-hmm.
They could not vote. if they had a job, the money went to the husband. The husband owned everything, even the children. It was not a good situation, and um, so this Annie, she says, "Well, I'll do it. I'll ride a bike around the world." And she'd never ridden a bike before. That's the funny thing. It's not like she was. There were some women who were cyclists, but
Mm-hmm.
she was not. She
Mm-hmm.
took 2 lessons and she did it. She had to earn all the money for the trip. She could have a job, like help out in a store, or her first money, she was the first woman to get sports endorsements.
Mm,
Now, sports endorsements are a big thing, right? These
exactly.
basketball players and baseball players and football players, they get they advertise shave cream or whatever
Yeah.
cereal.
Yeah.
They get millions of dollars, right? But back in the day, that wasn't really a thing. And she was the first
Mm-hmm.
woman to get paid for a sport, riding a bike.
Wow.
And
Wow.
a water company gave her $100 to put a sign on her bike that's Londonderry, because that was the name of the water company. And they
Londonderry.
told her, Londonderry, it was actually in Nashua, New Hampshire, right around the corner from me.
Mm-hmm.
And they asked her to take the name of Londonderry as her last name for the duration of the trip, which was a
Oh,
very smart thing because her name was Annie Cohen Kopchowski, and that would not have been such a good name to go around the world in
right.
1894
In
for
the
a woman. So
1800s. Right.
she was Annie Londonderry.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and so she gets a bike and she begins, and she says, I never felt such a feeling of independence
My
as
goodness.
when I rode on the bike. And she has all kinds of adventures. She goes to Chicago and she trades her bike because she's riding a women's 42-pound bike
Mm,
with long skirts
long
and
skirt. Yeah.
corset and a high neck. And she trades the bike for a men's racer that only weighs 21 pounds, but has no brakes. And she puts on men's trousers.
Wow.
Uh,
Yeah.
as balance steer, pedal balance steer, look out because she has no brakes. And she does it. I mean, and women all over the world are watching, right? Because journalists are reporting about her all over the world. She telegraphs, no internet, right? No cell phones.
Yes. Yes.
Telegraphs every city that she's going to arrive at. And so all the bikers come out, the cyclists to greet her, and the journalists come and she tells them all kinds of tall
Yeah.
tales. But
Tall tales. Really, she was that kind of woman,
oh
right?
my
She
God, she and
took
in the
control
book
of her
it says
narrative.
she told tall tales faster than her wheels spun. She did.
I think
She
I
did.
kind of dig that though,
Yeah.
being in control. But here's a woman that left her family, left her children to take
Yes.
on this challenge, and
Yes.
to go around the world on a bike.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, wow.
And she accomplishes it. She does it. She gets back. She gets the money. She moves her family to New York City. She gets a job writing a column for the New York World, which was the
My goodness.
newspaper there. And she does a lot of. I'm not saying she was the most high level person. I think, but I think she was
Mhm,
very
mhm,
courageous. She did something no woman had done before. She proved that women could do what a man could do.
mhm.
And in fact, that's the quote that opens the story. I am a journalist and a new woman. If that term means that I believe I can do anything any man can do. And that's the opening page. She's leading all these journalists on a merry chase after her, and they were all men.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
So
Love
I
that.
love stories about people who overcame obstacles, who in their own time might not have been recognized as doing something really great, who made a difference in the world with their courage and with being willing to stand out and do something. I mean, Marilyn Monroe and Ella Fitzgerald, that was a time when most white starlets did not hang out in jazz bars. They just didn't. And but Marilyn absolutely loved Ella. And she's quoted, she says, I love her, not only as a singer, but as a person. She so respected Ella because Ella, it didn't matter how famous she got, Ella remained true to who she was.
Right. Yeah.
And Ella loved Marilyn. You know, so it was such a beautiful relationship that they had. And I think children need to know that about people, that we have so many layers. They may have heard about Marilyn Monroe, whatever, you know, she was this sexy starlet or whatever, but she was so much more than that. And I think a story like Making Their Voices Heard helps children understand that what you see on the outside isn't all that there is with people. And everyone has a story, right? And everyone has a story to tell. And that these relationships between people, people can look different than you or I, but we can love them.
Right.
And
And
support them.
there are real stories behind the stardom of
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
So what is wonderful is that through your talking and you're very you get excited, you get a little emotional when you talk about how you craft for the heart of your story. And I was going to ask you that question, but really, as you're talking, you are revealing. I was going to ask you for like this magic. What is Vivian Kirkfield's magical formula for finding your way into a story or finding the heart of the story? But you really are sharing that the love that you have for the characters that you think about writing is that kind of where you begin? How do you find your way? How do you arrive at like that first line? I love that beginning line for oh my gosh, I'm gonna say it wrong again. Balance,
Pedal, balance, steer.
Pedal, balance, steer.
Right.
I love that opening line. I love the opening line for that story. How do you get to that opening line? How do you arrive at that inciting incident and push us further into the scenes with these characters?
Yeah, I love that question. And you know how you can remember pedal, balance, steer? So
How?
PBS, you know, like
PBS, the public broadcasting.
pedal, balance, steer.
Pedal,
There you
balance,
go.
steer. Thank you. Thank you.
I always try to think of, because I'm terrible with names. So I try to make a connection with when people introduce me, they're like, oh, my name is whatever. And I try to like think of how am I gonna remember that person's name? Yeah. So like with this story, I saw this picture and I was like, I grew up in the 50s. I knew about these two women, but I could tell from this picture, they are friends.
You
They
could
love
tell,
each other,
yes,
right?
that
Right?
picture
You can
tells
tell.
that picture tells an amazing story. You see
Look at
the
the
intimacy.
expression, right? Yes, that's
Yes,
right.
yes.
It's so personal, so intimate. And so I had to research and I had to find out what was behind that picture,
You
right?
had to. You had to
I
find
had
out what
to.
was behind
I
the
had to.
picture.
And that's my hope with children. That's why I'm writing, because I hope that when they read these stories, they will have to find out something. I don't know what they'll have to find out, but they'll have to find
I
out
love
something
that.
because it will engage them. You know, it will engage them. So the opening line for this one, because it's about two women, is Ella and Marilyn. On the outside, you couldn't find two girls who looked more different, but on the inside, they were alike, full of hopes and dreams and plans of what might be. And full of hopes and dreams and plans of what might be. It's very rhythmical, right? It's satisfying, right? So the whole story is how they were different, but how they were alike and how they joined forces. And the ending, because that's my little secret sauce, is that my beginning and my ending almost always mirror each other. So they echo each other. It's not the same, but there's something similar. And so the last page, the last page is when they're at that place. The rest of their lives, Ella Fitzgerald and Marilyn Monroe remained good friends. Ella never missed one of Marilyn's movies, and Marilyn never stopped listening to Ella's songs. On the outside, these two stars couldn't have looked more different, but on the inside, they both understood that sometimes even stars need a little help to shine. And if I tell you that I'm getting chills when I read that, even though, how many times did I revise this, Pam? Hundreds and hundreds. And how many times have I read it in school visits or wherever?
Yes.
Hundreds. But it still gives me a chill. And so that is something, if you read your story aloud, and please, everybody, read your stories aloud, record yourself reading it, listen back. So you hear you hear it being read to you, have other people read it. If the beginning lines engage you and they hook you in, and the ending lines give you a chill, it's good. You're good to go. Send it out. And the middle has to, of course, be moving.
The middle has to drive you.
Yeah.
That satisfying
Exactly. I mean, we have time. I just wanted to share with you one of the stories in this book, From Here to There, the last story, which is about Ray Montague.
Okay.
Because you asked me about, like, how do I pick the stories, right?
Yes.
How do I pick the stories? Why did I pick this story? Well, I needed a story about a ship. Okay. I had I had a train, and I had a rocket, and I had a car, and whatever. And I thought it would be good to have a ship. And I wanted a woman. I wanted a diverse woman. I mean, because most of the stories of these inventors are men. So I wanted something different. And I found this information about Ray Montague. And so I'll begin. When Ray Montague was 7 years old, she knew exactly what she wanted to be when she grew up. In 1942, while taking a tour of a captured enemy submarine, she peered through the periscope. She admired the gleaming dials on the control panel. Ray wondered what kind of job she'd need in order to operate a submarine. So she asked the tour guide. Oh, you'd need to be an engineer, he told her, but you don't ever have to worry about that. Why did he say that? Because she's a little Black girl in 1942 in Little Rock, Arkansas. That's why, because that wasn't going to be a job that she was allowed to have. At that time, most people expected girls to get married and have a family when they grew up. But right then and there, Ray made up her mind to become an engineer. When she got home, Ray asked her mother to help her find out what she would have to study to become an engineer. They learned that Ray would have to take lots of math and science. She was ready. And so I think that's such a good story for young children to hear, that here was this little girl who had so many mountains put in front of her, told, you don't have to worry about that. You're never going to be an engineer. But what happens? Not only does she become an engineer, but she becomes the lead engineer of the team for the Navy. And they wind up designing the very first computer generated ship design
Mhm.
or a
Mhm.
frigate or some kind of a submarine.
Mhm. Mhm.
And it closes with a quote, open the doors for other people, Ray said. Become a master of the game and get inside the system so you can help change the rules. You have to change the rules so you can open the doors.
My goodness. My.
And she did that when she rose in her positions. She would go around to companies, to the mailroom, and she would find
Mm.
marginalized, diverse people who were sorting the mail, but they had PhDs, right?
Yes.
And
Right.
she would find them, promote them and find
Yeah.
them jobs that they deserve to have. So,
Amazing.
so I love, for me, the opening lines, even though I tell people, you're writing a story, just get it down. Just write it. Don't worry about the grammar. Don't worry about the words.
Yeah.
Get it down.
Yeah.
But I do actually work really hard on opening lines and closing lines
Mm.
because I
Mhm.
think the opening lines are the key, the doorway, so to speak, into the story for a child. And if
Mhm.
you can hook that child
Mhm. Mhm.
with your opening lines, they're going to start turning the pages. And
They
then, of
will.
course, your pacing has to be good. And then when we get to the end, it has to satisfy, right?
Yeah.
They have
Right.
to get that chill or that feeling like, ah. So I always say there's three kinds of endings: the aha, like, oh my gosh, surprise, aha,
Mhm.
or the funny ending, ha 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 ha, or
Yeah.
the heartfelt ending, ah, right?
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so those are little tips.
That quote that you read at the end of that you're from here to their story about Ray, and it reminds me of you because you have gone into places and spaces and you have opened the doors and you have launched so many careers and you have been such a supporter and cheerleader. You are part of what makes this community work work, and you are the reason why so many people have chosen not to give up on this writing career. Um, I got to end this with your 50 precious words. Um, with all that you do, how do you find the time to do this monumental writing challenge every year with 50 precious words? And also you do it with the kiddos as well.
Right.
Um, First of all, let's talk about how did that even get started? And then where do you find the time to do that? But before we do that, how many books did that make? How many was that, like
So it
eight
made
books?
five already published. One coming next year is six.
Okay.
Two coming in 2025 so far.
Hmm.
So seven,
Yeah,
eight.
that's eight. That's
And I have another one that's a board book that's going to be coming in 2026.
I am
Talk to an
so
editor. Yeah.
I'm so incredibly proud of you. When I think about where we started and how you what you've done, it's like every time you turn around, Vivian's writing another book. Oh my gosh, Vivian's got another book coming out. But
But no, there's a lot of, I mean, I don't want people to get the feeling like, oh my God, she sits down and she just writes these stories and she sends them to her agent. She's got an
and
agent, she
voila,
sends them to the
yeah,
agent, and the agent sends them out and poof, she's got a book.
right.
No,
Hmm.
it
Hmm.
doesn't happen that way. I get emails like every week with they didn't like this and they didn't want that, and this one is no and no and no, and it's almost all no's. But you do
Mm,
have to be prolific, right? So those five P's, and I really need six P's because prolific is one of
right.
them.
Yes. Yes.
You can't be writing one story for 15 years. I mean, you can be working on one story for 15 years, but you darn well better have a
Some
whole
others.
bunch of other stories as well.
Mm,
Because if an agent loves your one story, they're going to want to see more.
they're going to
And
want
and there's so much to write about that, if you love the writing, you need to be writing. And I know everybody has a different situation. So I'm retired. I have 24 hours a day. I could be writing or sleeping or whatever I want to be doing. And there are many people who have jobs
Yeah.
that's putting food on the table, and they have families, so
Mhm.
they have responsibilities, and maybe they have aging parents, and that's a responsibility.
Mhm.
So I don't say this without thought, but if your passion is to be a picture book writer or a writer of KidLit, you need to be writing.
Got to write. Yeah. Yeah.
And
So,
you have to find the time, somewhere.
and when we talk about there are so many stories out there, my mind gets blown when I see all of the entries that come into your 50 precious words. I mean, literally, I mean, people are writing these amazing. We were talking about how a few of us were like literally crying over some of the entries. 50 words, only 50
Or
words.
less.
Yes, with such emotion, with such commitment to making it a purposeful read. How did that get started?
All
And
right. So,
yeah,
and thank you, Pam, because you have been so helpful as a judge. And I don't know whether you're up for this coming year, but I sure hope
yes,
you
I
are.
am. I'm
Thank
so
you.
honored.
Yay,
Yeah, I'm
yay,
so honored to be a part
yay.
of that. I love it when I see the talent that comes across. And then when I see people say, because of 50 precious words, I now have a
Yes,
contract.
I mean, a lot of the blog posts that I do are for new books,
Mm-hmm,
and people reach out and they're like, "Oh my God, Vivian, I ship." That's one of the names. It was this
mm-hmm,
year. It came out.
mm-hmm,
I ship, and that
mm-hmm,
was a 50 precious words. And so many stories did start out as 50 precious words. So it started in 2016. I had just signed with my agent in 2015. I had the book deal for Sweet Dream Sarah. And so now 2016 starts, and I'm like, I read about Zeus, whose birthday is March 2nd.
mm-hmm,
And when he was writing, his editor, Bennett Cerf at Random House, challenged him to write a story for children with 50 unique words. So the story itself had 750 words, but only 50 unique. So he used and, ham, Sam, he used those many times. So there were only unique words, and that was green eggs and ham.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I said to myself, you know what? I wonder if I could write a story with only 50 words, not 50 unique words, but 50 words.
Mm-hmm.
And so I sat down and I wrote a story in 50 words, and I was like, I'm going to make a challenge. So I put it out on my blog, and I told my agent, she was, oh, I'll give a prize. I'll do a critique for you. And other friends who were writers, and some of them had books out, oh, I'll donate a book or whatever. So I announced on March 2nd, I guess, of 2016, hi, everyone, I'm going to have this contest, and just put your story in the blog, in the comments. And
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the week, I'll announce 20 winners.
Mm-hmm.
I thought there'd be 10 stories. Friends would take pity on me. There were 128 stories.
The first time
So
out.
the first time out, right. So I read all the stories. I didn't have any helpers. I read all this. My poor husband had to listen to me read them over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided that the first place winner was going to be this little story about a tiger. And it was such a sweet little rhyme. And I could see children wanting to hear it over and over and over again. So I
Mm-hmm.
announced the 20 winners, and the first winner was this Julie Avery. It turned out she lived in Switzerland. I had never heard her name before. And she chose my agent as her prize. And she sent that story to my agent. My agent loved it, asked to
Mm-hmm.
see more. Julie
Mm-hmm.
sent more. And my agent signed her. And that story became a book series called Little Tiger. Well, the Little Animal series with
Yeah.
Amicus. And it's all about this little tiger. And now there are actually 8 books. I don't know where they are. They're here somewhere. Books in the series. Little penguin, little zebra, little whatever. And she has other books as well, nonfiction.
Wow.
So, yeah, so that happened. This book was also had too many books. This is from Amber Hendricks, and that was a 50 Precious Words
Butterfly Store.
entry, Butterfly Store. And now she has a series with Amicus, Butterfly Store, and another story that was from a different year, Wildflowers Grow. And again, very simple. So, but
Wow.
don't think that it's just board books that 50 Precious Words can become, because
Yes.
I'll show
Yes.
you one other.
Uh-oh. Okay.
Uh-oh. So in 2021, Rico Arabia, who's an amazing writer and
Mm-hmm.
person,
Mm-hmm.
and he actually lives in the Boston area now, but he's from Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And he submitted a story, and it was called My Favorite Thing. And it was about, he had to bring his favorite thing for show and tell.
Mm-hmm.
And he brings his brother, his little brother, because
Mm-hmm.
that's his favorite thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the very first time that Federico wrote about his childhood experiences, which were very painful and
Painful.
difficult.
Mm.
And he was going to turn it into a picture book, but that 50 words actually became 50,000 words. And it's now this amazing award-winning that came out this year, YA novel.
Wow.
And in the back, he has, I should have had the placeholder, because in the back, okay, he has a picture of himself and his brother.
Mm.
And then this is the actual 50 Precious Words.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Wow.
And in the acknowledgments, he says, like he's so grateful to 50 Precious Words because it was the first time that he had ever expressed in writing
Wow.
that
Wow.
experience, and it empowered him. And
Mm.
I think for adults, but also for children, when we allow them to write small, it allows them to feel it's something they can do.
Mm.
Write a 1,000-word essay, or
That's a lot. Yeah.
150-word essay, but 50 words or less. I mean, hey,
Yes.
if you can write the story in 10 words,
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Mm-hmm.
fine with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So so I so now, of course, 50 Precious Words for Adults is this huge, amazing undertaking. This year we had 756 stories and 60 astonishing prizes,
Yes.
like
Yes.
editor critiques and agent critiques, and a retreat to
Highlights and
sites,
yeah.
and amazing prizes. So I'm so proud of the the
This
concept,
international challenge, this
international
international
challenge.
event.
And now we have the literacy initiative, where
Yes.
I
Yes.
requested participants to purchase a book from my local indie. So it's a kind of a win, 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 win. My local indie gets business. The authors and illustrators of the books that are bought have their books, and we donate it to schools in need in Manchester or Nashua, in my local area. And so the schools benefit, the students benefit. I mean, what could be better, right?
So not only have you put yourself in this amazing, generous space, but also this very, very busy and time consuming space where you have to read all of the works
Yes,
and read them multiple times and read the finals multiple times and then send out all of these books that you collect um, to these
to the
schools that are
schools, right?
blessed with these books. Do you sleep?
Fortunately, I don't have any time that I need to get up. So if I stay up at 3 in the morning, I
Mhm.
can sleep till 11. But then in 2018, I decided that we could open it up to kids. And so
Yes.
in May, during Children's Book Week, I think it is,
Hmm.
Children's Book Week,
Hmm.
the first week in May, I have 50 precious words for kids. And I invite teachers and parents or homeschooling parents to send students or their children's work.
Yeah.
And the kids can illustrate if they want, as long as they send it to me in a JPEG, so
Hmm.
I can just
Hmm.
put it up.
Yeah.
And on Mother's Day, I publish all the stories, and that
Lovely.
can be life changing, right? That can
Yes.
be life changing for a
Yes.
child to see their illustrations or their words in print on a
Yeah.
blog. I
Yeah.
mean, that could be the start of a young child saying, "I'm going to be a writer," or "I'm going to be an artist," or whatever
Yeah.
they say,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we have to give children the power to hope and dream
Yes.
and make
Yeah.
plans of what might be, just like Ella and Marilyn, right?
What might be. Right.
Right, right.
These are plans
And
of what might
these
be.
these days, life is so difficult, and
Yeah.
the world is very sad. And instead of reflecting that and putting that negative energy back into the world, we as writers,
Hmm.
you and me and the
Hmm.
others or illustrators, are trying to put positivity
Hmm.
back in the world. So we're
Yeah.
projecting positive energy. And children need that. They need to find joy. They need to know that there's going to be something
Yeah.
after, right?
Right. Right.
There's a future and they're
Yeah.
going to be part of it. So
Hmm.
I hope, and this year, one high school teacher sent me 70 stories from her high school students.
Oh my
I
goodness.
was blown
High
away.
school. Oh,
17,
I love it. I
17 and
love it.
18-year-olds, yep,
I
wrote
love that.
amazing stories. Amazing
I
stories. So yeah, so it is time consuming and it's very tiring. And distributing the prizes
yeah,
takes
I can't.
weeks, like 3 weeks to distribute
Yeah.
prizes. But you know what? It's all good.
Mm,
It's all good because it's for it's for the world.
yeah.
It's for the kids. It's for the future. It's for me because I have fun. The
And
minute that it's not fun, the minute that something isn't giving you joy,
yes,
you have to reassess and
yes, you
say,
do.
is this the right path for me?
Right. Do I want to be a part of this? Yeah.
Yeah,
You have been such, like I said before, and I keep saying this, Vivian, I call you Lady Vivian, but
I know you do. It's so sweet. I love it.
but you've been such an amazing influencer in this KidLit community, and I know all of the people that have been in your circle that have influenced you, the Julie Headlands, the Penny Parker Klosterman,
Right.
our
Susanna
beloved
Hill.
Susanna
Right.
Hill. I mean, how can Renee Latali?
You, right? Renee LaTulip, another
Is it
amazing,
Latulip?
amazing.
This just there have been so many people that have influenced me, like Carol Boston Weatherford,
Mhm.
Lloyd Cooper, Kelly Lyon Starling, and all of the people it highlights. And I love that how how important community can be, and how important community has been. And I think that there is no better, no supportive, and there is no. Our community is so generous. Um, that it kind of boggles my mind. And
Mhm.
people who have been in other businesses or worked in other industries, and they've just lawyers. I mentored there was a critique, a manuscript I could critique by a lawyer who said, I came to this industry, I had no idea the generosity that
Mhm.
exists, and you are a major part of that generosity. And I just kind of want to give you your flowers and just
Thank
say we
you.
appreciate you, we love you, and we are so grateful that you are the Lady Vivian that you are.
Thank
So,
you, Pam. I mean, feel so blessed to have come to this in the second act of my life, right? The second
mhm,
career kind of my life, and to feel like I'm living my dream. Who can say that?
I know exactly. I know we get to wake up and we have the gift of being able to wake up and
Yeah.
trying to produce something that hopefully kids will enjoy, teachers will enjoy. And we get to do that, though. We get to do
Yes,
that for a living, and it's such a
yeah,
blessing.
and I am excited.
I am too.
Yeah.
So I have one last question, and I know that you always get this, but I guess there are two questions rolled up into one about the advice you would give to writers. Would it be the same for new writers and those seasoned writers? Or would the advice that you give to them be uniquely different for each group? You kind of touched on, you gave us some advice about standing in your why and being true to your story, and
Mhm.
why you make sure you understand why you are writing that story for children. Are there other pieces of advice that you have for new writers and seasoned writers?
Yeah, I think it would be the same advice for both. I
Mhm.
mean, other than the five P's, which we need to do those things, be passionate about what you're writing about,
Okay, passionate.
passionate. Um, Prepare. So you take courses or attend webinars or join KidLit groups, or that's how you prepare. Read mentor texts, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
You practice because you write and revise and write and revise and write. And don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to change it. You're not destroying it. Keep that draft and write anew. Patience, patience, and more patience. And the patience is not only patient with your critique buddies
Hmm.
or your family or the editor or the industry as a whole, but patient with yourself,
Hmm.
kind to yourself,
Hmm.
because this is a tough business with lots of rejection
Hmm.
and more waiting and more rejection. And and you can want to tear your hair out or cry, and that's
Hmm.
okay. Don't tear the hair out, but you can cry. It's all right. But be kind to yourself and be patient with yourself. We're all at different points in our lives, as I said before. Some of us work. Some of us
Yes.
have to put food on the table. Some people have families or whatever. They have obligations. So they can't be writing 24 hours a day. Don't beat yourself up and don't beat yourself up if, Joni and Mary and Sam get a starred Kirkus reviews and you
Mm.
don't, if you have a
Hmm.
book out, or they get a book deal and you don't, or they have an agent and you don't. We all are taking this journey in our own way, in our own time, and that's good. Make sure you surround yourself with positive people who
Must.
care about you, not just
Must.
family. Family are wonderful, and if they support your writing, that's great. But
Mm.
they really can usually not understand the insanity of this business. My
Hmm.
husband used to listen to me read a story and he'd be, oh, that's awesome, honey. Great. So the next week, okay, we would listen to the revision. I'd read it. All right. Sounds pretty much the same. Or why are you rewriting it? It was fine before.
Right, right.
So
Hmm. Hmm.
family, they're not, so you need
Right.
to find like-minded critique group members whether you find them in a class or you find them in a webinar or with SCBWI or in 12 by 12 if you're in that or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And surround yourself with those people who will be honest, who will give you great feedback, and who will be supportive and encouraging. And when you say, oh, they said no, they'll say, oh, let's go have a drink or let's go have an ice cream or whatever they say.
Right. Yes. 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 Yeah.
And eat
Yeah.
ice cream. Yes,
And
eat ice cream.
definitely eat ice cream. Definitely.
Definitely. So that would be my advice. Be the most important, be kind and never give up. If this is what you want to do, if this is what's in your heart to do, don't give up.
Yeah.
Just keep going.
Because if you give up, then
Reevaluate. Right.
the
If you
answer is
give up,
definitely no if you give up. Yeah.
right. Exactly. Exactly. So those are the 5 Ps, and they're working for me. They're working for me. And
They are.
stay inspired, go for walks or watch old movies or new movies, whatever, go to a museum, whatever inspires you, whatever fills your heart with joy, do that.
Yes. Yeah. This has been just absolutely wonderful. Thank you, dear friend, for
Oh, you are welcome. Thank you for having me.
yeah, you are our first guest on KidLit Works, created with heart, created from the heart. And you have such a big heart, and we adore you. Everyone who joined us, please make sure you subscribe to our newsletter, to our blog. And we would love it if you shared this amazing chit and chat moment that we had with Lady Vivian Kirkfield. And for that, we'll wave a goodbye, blow kisses, and say thank you. And we'll see you again real soon. Bye, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Vivian. Well, are you sure you want to? Yes, I do want to stop.